On today's show, we're talking about three big money trades that might present hidden value to the New York Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so the New York Mets have a lot of needs that need to be addressed this offseason, and free agency is the place that they should turn to first. But if they had to look to trades to try to fill out their roster, are there some players on big money deals the Mets can target where they don't have to give up a large amount of prospect capital to land an impact player? I've ID'd three players for today's show that I want to talk about. And the first one is Cody Bellinger. If you look at the New York Mets next season, who's playing center field? Right now, you would say it's Tyrone Taylor. And while Taylor earning that job at the end of the season, I don't think that a team that has World Series aspirations is relying on Tyrone Taylor to be their everyday center fielder throughout the entire season. He is a great fourth outfielder, good option to have. Your starting center fielder, you want to set the mark a little bit higher, but it's hard to find a center fielder in this market. In fact, there is none. You look at center field right now in free agency, best possible target you have, Harrison Bader. That might be the best center fielder on the market. We just saw that play out. You look at the trade market. We at one point discussed Cedric Mullins as a potential option, but even then, we don't know if the Orioles are going to dangle him or not. He is going to hit free agency after this season, but they might want to just hold on to him. So you really look at it, and it is hard to find a center fielder because there's just so few of them. I've said it on this show recently, center field is the weakest position in Major League Baseball. And that's why you hope at some point you can develop your own homegrown center fielder, the way the Padres just did, taking a converted shortstop in Jackson Merrill, stick him in center field, and it worked brilliantly. And now they're set at that position. But look around baseball. How many teams have a center fielder that can provide you with at least league average defense, and they are above average bat? You have Michael Harris the second. You got Jackson Merrill. You got Julio Rodriguez. And the list gets really shorter and shorter. Aaron Judge, if he's a center fielder. If not, that's one more guy you take off. A guy like Byron Buxton, is injury prone. Dalton Varsho, more of a fielder than a hitter. I mean, you really have to look at it, but I think you'd have a real problem even coming up with 10 names going into next season that you'd feel good about as a starting center fielder. This is where Cody Bellinger comes in. Bellinger is not an elite defensive center fielder, but he's not going to hurt you out there. And he is an above average hitter, especially at that position. When you look at the contract that he signed with the Cubs, he was really getting paid in a lot of ways for his ability to play center field. That money made sense with him in center. Now that they have Pete Crow Armstrong, which Mets fans know all about Pete Crow Armstrong, the guy that the Cubs got in the Javi Baez trade, he has established himself. He is an elite defensive center fielder, and they have some hope on his upside offensively. So he's probably going to be running out there every day next year in center field. Cody Bellinger is kind of a luxury on this roster that they don't really need. They can take that money he's going to make next year and reallocate it to trying to sign a pitcher if they wanted to. And at $27.5 million, I think shopping that contract, how many teams are going to sign up for it? So I look at Cody Bellinger as a unique opportunity where the New York Mets can see this guy and say, all right, next year, is Cody Bellinger our best possible option to start in center field? And I would say yes. Again, there's not a lot of other options out there. And you look at the player he's been in the last 2 years. You have a ceiling that we saw probably in 2023 when he hit 307, 356 on base, 525 slug, had an 881 OPS, smashed 26 homers, stole 20 bases, put up a 4.5 win season. 4.4 was his FWAR. That was a really good year. He hit the open market again after previously signing a 1-year deal with the Cubs. He ended up with this new deal that he has now. It's a 3-year deal with opt-outs after each year. So he just essentially opted in to $27.5 million. And next year he can opt into an additional $25 million. That is the best version of Cody Bellinger, I think. What we saw this year was good Cody Bellinger, maybe the floor. And the floor wasn't that bad. In 2024, he hit 266, 325 on base, 426 slug. So the OPS was 750. Hit 18 home runs, drove in 78, stole 9 bases, can play right field and center field at a league average level at least. He can play first base. So if you lose Pete Alonso, you have a guy that can move all over the place. Maybe you're going to next season and you're just relying on Vientos at first and all the young guys at third. If Beatty, Mauricio, Acuna, whoever you're trying to plug in that spot isn't working out, and all of a sudden, let's just say Drew Gilbert bursts onto the scene, he could be your center fielder. Well, now you can move Bellinger over to first base. And the thing I like about Cody Bellinger, the last 2 years, he has missed some time. 130 games he's played in each of the last 2 seasons. But you look at the injuries, a knee injury in 2023, first time in his career that he had a knee injury, and he didn't have another one this past season. So that doesn't scream to me a guy that's got knee problems. This past year, it was a rib injury and a finger injury. I believe both of them coming from hit by pitches. So I don't think that this is a guy that can't play more than the 130 games he's played the last 2 years. And if you get more games out of him and you look at the approach that he has, I think you're going to get really good results. This guy the last 2 years has had an identical strikeout rate of 15.6%. That's pretty incredible because with the Dodgers, his strikeout rate was climbing well north of 25%. Now he's slashed that. His walk rate has been about the same, 7.2% in 2023, 7.9% in 2024. So what that tells me is this guy is giving you a very disciplined at bat. And if he runs into some more home runs, that OPS is going to skyrocket. And if some more hits are falling, the batting average, the on base are going to tick up. But if nothing else, you're talking about a 750 baseline for his OPS and maybe the ceiling of a 900 OPS. That's a wide range. But when you're looking at a guy on a 1-year deal, I think it's a very worthwhile gamble to trade for him because, yeah, if he only ends up being a, let's say, 750 OPS guy with 20 home runs and 10 stolen bases, is that a $27.5 million player? No. But is that still way better production than you could expect from the center field position from anybody else the Mets could realistically acquire? I think it is. Now, if he is the best version of himself, and let's just say instead of getting 130 games, you get 150 games, and you get a similar level of production as he put up in 2023. He hits over 300. He gets on base over a 350 clip. He slugs over a 500 clip. He hit 26 home runs in 130 games. All of a sudden, maybe he pops 32 home runs. Maybe he drives in 100. Maybe he still goes back and steals 20 bases again. He could be a 5-win player still at 30 years old. And then all of a sudden, that $27.5 million that you spent on him this year, it's worth every penny. And at that point, he probably opts out, hits the open market. He's off your books, and maybe one of your young guys has stepped up, and you have a center fielder of the future. But when you look at the versatility that Cody Bellinger can bring as a guy that can play center, he can play right, he can play first, that is immensely valuable. You talk about the ability to hit some home runs, but even better, a guy that isn't striking out at a huge clip anymore. So a guy that's going to put the ball in play, still has enough athleticism to be an asset on the bases, whether he's going to steal 20 bags again like he did in 2023, or if it's more, 10 stolen bases like it was this past year. This is just a good baseball player. And I think from a Cubs perspective, if they were able to turn Cody Bellinger into a prospect or two, get that money off their books, and reallocate it towards their pitching, I think for them, that's a pretty big win. For the Mets, you get a guy you can plug right into center field on opening day. And as your roster evolves, maybe you move him off the position. But I look at Cody Bellinger as a really nice fit for the Mets. Will they shop in that market when it comes to trading for a guy with that type of a salary? Who knows? But to me, this is one of the more underrated guys that's on the trade market. He opted into that contract because he wasn't going to make more than $27.5 million in the upcoming season. And then beyond that, if he has a bad year, he still has another chance to go into the market after another prove-it deal where he's going to make $25 million next year. He's got 2 more cracks at being able to hit the market before he's 32 years old to get that long-term deal that you'd think that he wants. Maybe it's not a 7-year deal anymore, but he still might be in play for a 4 or 5-year deal. He's got that carrot to play for as well. So I think it's kind of a slam dunk. I hope the Mets are in on it, but whoever does get Cody Bellinger, if he is moved, I think they're going to get one of the steals of this offseason. I really do. Now, we got a couple other unique trade targets to talk about. One of them, once signed with the Mets on a $300 million deal that never quite got across the finish line. We're talking Carlos Correa next. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today. Again, remember, throw that $5 bet, and if you win it, $150 in bonus bets. Find something that you know is going to come through. The most lopsided NBA game, throw $5 on it, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our next goal is to get to 11,000 subscribers. We're within 200. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Could Carlos Correa be a New York Met after all? This is a fun one. I think this is the most unlikely of the trades we're going to talk about today, but I still think it's an interesting thought exercise just because we're talking about the idea of acquiring a third baseman, right? And the two that are on the market in free agency, you got Willy Adames, you got Alex Bregman. It's amazing to me how Carlos Correa's contract looks now a couple years later because he's coming off a season where he only played 86 games. And that's going to be the huge concern with Carlos Correa moving forward. He had 2 teams balk at his medicals. That ankle that he screwed up in the minor leagues that doctors think is a ticking time bomb. Well, that's not why he missed time this past year as plantar fasciitis, although a foot injury makes you wonder if there's some connection in some ways. But with all of that said, look at the remaining money on Carlos Correa's deal. He is still owed $133.33 million over the next 4 years, comes out to an average annual value of $33.33 million. It's a lot of money, certainly. That's right in line with Francisco Lindor. But it's only 4 more years on the 6-year, $200 million guaranteed that he got with the Twins after the deal with the Mets fell through. Compare that to what we're talking about with Willy Adames. If Willy Adames is going to get a 6 or a 7-year deal, it's going to pay him potentially as much as $25 million a year. I would much prefer the contract, just the contract of Carlos Correa than Willy Adames, because let's just be honest here, in a vacuum, Carlos Correa is a better player, and I'd even say maybe a significantly better player historically than Willy Adames. Carlos Correa is a perennial all-star when he's right. Willy Adames is, he'll get an all-star or 2 throughout his entire career. You look at what Correa did this past season when he was on the field. He hit .310. He got on base at a .388 clip. He slugged at a .517 clip. Had a .905 OPS, hit 14 home runs in those 86 games, and drove in 54. He's playing about a half a season, so you imagine over a full year, if he was healthy, you're probably talking about 25 homers, maybe 100 RBIs. His weighted runs created plus, which is a stat that measures hitters on a league average of 100, was 155. That's 55 points better than league average. That's 18 points better, if I'm not mistaken, than Francisco Lindor. And you look at his WAR number, a 4.3 WAR in 86 games. We're talking about over a full season, a 7-win player. That's elite production for Carlos Correa this past season. With all that said, it's 86 games played, and it's still a ticking time bomb on the medicals. At least that's what we were all led to believe when the deal with the Mets fell through. I think it's a good thing they didn't end up signing him to that decade-long contract. But now when you look at a deal that's got 4 years left and at a generally reasonable number for the production you're talking about for a guy that literally just turned 30 years old. So you're looking at age 30, 31, 32, and 33. It's not a bad deal whatsoever. And I think it's actually going to be a much better deal than whatever Bregman gets, whatever Adames gets. There is a couple caveats because the contract does have some vesting options. 2029, which would be the 5th year of the deal, it's a vesting option for $25 million that will vest if he has 575 plate appearances, finishes top 5 in MVP, wins a Silver Slugger, as the LCS MVP or the World Series MVP. But if any of those vest, for the most part, it's because he was healthy in that 2028 season. And then you're not mad at a $25 million option. And then each year beyond that, that option, it gets knocked down by $5 million and it gets knocked down by 25 plate appearances. So for the following season, he has to reach 550 plate appearances or any of those awards: MVP, Silver Slugger, LCS MVP, World Series MVP. Then the following year, it drops from 20 million down to 15 million, then from 15 million down to 10 million. So yes, if all those options vest, he gets an additional 45, 60, $70 million. So it turns into a $270 million contract. But that would have meant that he defied all odds and was incredibly healthy. And again, these vesting options get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. The only way a vesting option can really screw you is if either the production tails off, but he's healthy, or if he's not healthy, gets healthy for the playoffs, and wins the LCS MVP or the World Series MVP. Granted, if he wins the LCS MVP, you went to the World Series. If he wins the World Series MVP, you won the World Series. And then if he comes back and he's a broken player, then you get him off the books the following year. But the way I look at this Carlos Correa contract now in retrospect, ended up being a great deal for the Twins. I really think it did. The problem is it's the Twins, and they're a small market team that is strapped for cash. I think they would love to get this off their books just because it would give them some financial freedom to do other things, although he is their best player, technically. If Royce Lewis ever stayed healthy, it might be him. Byron Buxton, if he was healthy and productive, it could be him. They got 3 guys that are just massive flight risks every single year. To get out of one of them, it might make some sense for them. I don't know. He has a no trade clause. Would he still want to come and play with Lindor and be on the Mets? I would think so. If you have an opportunity to stay in Minnesota where you're watching a team that's strapped for cash, or you could go to a Mets team that potentially had signed Juan Soto in the same offseason. I mean, that would be the absolute insane big money Mets coming through if you were able to pull off a Soto signing and then you end up sprinkling in a little Carlos Correa trade at the end of the offseason. We're playing the video game stuff right now. We're fully into MLB The Show. This is probably the least likely trade that will happen that we're talking about the show today. I could see Bellinger happening. So many hurdles are in the way when it comes to Correa. You have to be okay with the medicals this time, the 4 years. You have to get the Twins on board to deal him, and you have to get Correa on board to come to the Mets. I think it's actually a great fit. I just don't know if it would actually happen. I think Bellinger is one where you really could see it because it's a 1-year deal, and it's a similar situation as far as a player that is probably making a little bit more based on average annual value than they might if they hit the market today, and the Mets could capitalize, swoop in and trade for one of these guys to really build out their lineup, because there just is a very top-heavy free agent class this year that isn't entirely malleable when you're talking about trying to get a good defender who can hit. There's a few of those guys in this free agent class, Willy Adames being one of them, but a lot of these guys are sort of bat-first free agents. Bellinger, Correa, these are guys that still do it both ways. Final segment, though, we have what I believe is the most likely trade of the bunch, one that fans are immediately going to reject, but I'm going to tell you why there is some merit to it We're talking Jordan Montgomery to close out the show. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing. That thing is teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks. In the Mets, you can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways and get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's talk about Jordan Montgomery. This is one I've been teasing all week. It's a starting pitcher that the Mets could acquire for straight cash. Why would they want Jordan Montgomery? He is coming off a season where he pitched to a 6.23 ERA, and he just opted into a contract that'll pay him $22.5 million. The Arizona Diamondbacks owner, prior to him opting into that contract, dared him to leave by essentially saying that it was the worst signing their franchise has ever made. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he pretty much said that created their season. The money they spent didn't pay off. It was his fault, all the yada, yada, yada. And by his fault, the owner said, it's my fault that we signed that contract. But that guy's still on your team. And so it is the most obvious of pitchers that's going to get moved this offseason. The only question is, how much money are the Diamondbacks going to eat on that $22.5 million to get another team to bite on it? And I actually wrote an article about this for Just Baseball, detailing 3 teams who can make this move. The 3 teams were the Rangers, the Mets, and the Braves. And the Braves are an interesting one because this is the type of deal that they make and they come out like bandits on every time. They did it just last year with Chris Sale. They got the Red Sox to send in, I think it was $34 million with Chris Sale to get Chris Sale off their books. And then they reworked Chris Sale's contract, and Chris Sale did not get a dime from the Braves last year. He got paid entirely from the Red Sox, and they actually got an additional $1 million. That's how crazy it was. By reworking the contract, $1 million of Chris Sale's salary just went to them. It was crazy what they did. And when it comes to a luxury tax hit, even though I believe Chris Sale is making $22 million this year, somehow, some way, his AAV is only $3 million for the luxury tax for the Braves. It is the most incredible financial wizardry that I've ever seen from a executive. Alex Anthopoulos is great at his job. This is the Mets' opportunity to pull off not quite the same type of a deal, but a similar one, because you can get the Diamondbacks to eat a lot of money here. And I the comp that I found in the article that made a lot of sense to me was looking at Luis Severino. Severino was coming off a season with the Yankees last year where he had pitched to an ERA well north of 6. He's still, based on pedigree, got a 1-year, $14 million deal from the Mets. So by virtue of what the market was last year for just baseline middle of the rotation starters, $14 million is not that crazy. Could the Diamondbacks eat $8.5 million and move on from Jordan Montgomery? I think they probably can. They just have to find the right team that believes in a bounce back. And why you believe in a bounce back is because Jordan Montgomery, prior to last year, was as dependable of a starting pitcher as you were going to find in Major League Baseball. For every full season he pitched in, 155 plus innings and less than a 4 ERA. Every single year. When he was a rookie in 2017, ERA in the 3.8s, he had a 155 and a third innings pitched. Next year, he makes 6 starts. He's trending in the same direction, a 3.8 something ERA, I believe. Or maybe it was in the 3.6s. Regardless, goes down with Tommy John, doesn't pitch anymore in 2018, doesn't pitch at all in 2019, comes back in 2020, struggles in the COVID year. 2021, he's fully back from Tommy John. Again, he posts 157, I believe it was, innings pitched, and an ERA in the 3.8s. Then he lowered that the following season, 2022, got the ERA in the 3.6s, if I'm not mistaken. And then his best year was, of course, 2023, when he pitched to a 3.20 ERA, carried it over into the playoffs, was everything the Rangers needed to win that World Series. He showed that he could pitch in the biggest moments just a year ago. Then he hits the market at the right time, should have got a 5-year deal for $75 million, locked in a bunch of money, locked in a lot of years, wouldn't have had to worry about a thing, go into a good winning situation where he could just be comfortable, be a middle of the rotation guy, and just, ride it out and just focus on pitching. And instead, he waited around all offseason because Scott Boras was trying to sell him as an ace because he was an ace in the playoffs. They got screwed. He ends up going to the Diamondbacks at the 11th hour, doesn't get any spring training, fires Scott Boras immediately after signing the contract, just showing how frustrated he was. And then drops into one of the worst ballparks for him to pitch in. His splits last year hit an ERA in the mid-5s when he was pitching on the road, which still isn't great. But at home in Arizona, it was nearly a 7 ERA, 6.90. Jordan Montgomery is a sinker baller. And that is the fastest infielder, one of the fastest infields in baseball in Arizona. So it's a bad ballpark for him to pitch in. He's pissed off. He doesn't have a good spring. And then he's starting behind, gets off to a rough start, is trying to pull himself out of a hole all season long. I think you could look at last year and flush it and say, there's a better chance you're going to get a guy similar to the other, 4 or 5 years of his career where he was sub-4 ERA, 150 innings pitched every year. And last year he wasn't hurt at all either. So the durability is still there. I think at worst, you're talking about a 5-starter. At best, you're talking about a 3-starter that can take the ball in the playoffs. So when you think about those outcomes and you think about acquiring a guy just for money, my question is, who on the free agent market are you going to get at that $14 million price tag that's going to be better with more upside than Jordan Montgomery? Is there a Severino in this free agent class? And maybe there is one. I have to dive into it a little bit more. There might be some guys with some value, but the guys that I think fell into that class, Nick Pivetta and Nick Martinez, they've both got a qualifying offer. So now if you sign them, you're giving up draft picks. With Jordan Montgomery, you're not giving up draft picks or prospects even. I mean, you could legitimately call the Diamondbacks right now and say, we'll take on $14 million for you. So you're only going to have to pay $8.5 million. And you could get him for basically free. There might be a name attached to the trade. Some prospect might head over, but not a guy in your top 30, not a guy that will hurt you. This is a guy you could acquire just for cash, essentially. And I think it really just depends on how many teams get in on it as far as how much money you'd have to actually pay him. But it's not our money as fans. It's Steve Cohen's money. Today, if you want to take on the whole contract, they would swoop in so quick on that. They would call into the league and just say, all right, we'll just trade him for straight cash. But the Mets don't have to do them that favor. They can sit on this market, keep their tabs on it, and I bet you they could get him for something closer to a $14 million deal for this upcoming season, having the Diamondbacks chip in the difference and only having to send a very, very, very minimal prospect, and really not even a prospect, probably just some organizational filler. And then you get a guy that's got a good track record who absolutely should be better than he was this past season. I don't know if he's going to go back to pitching to a 3.20 ERA, and I don't know if he's going to be the guy that leads the Mets to a World Series, but do I think he could be better than Paul Blackburn, Tyler McGill, and Jose Butto? I think he could. Do I even think there's a world that Jordan Montgomery turns in a better season than David Peterson? There is a world where that happens because he has a track record. I am as big of a David Peterson fan as there is. I have been on the David Peterson bandwagon for a long time. I still think he's a really good pitcher. Jordan Montgomery has done it for a long time. And I wouldn't just say, oh, he pitched to an ERA over 6. What have you done for me lately? What you've done for me lately is you've been horrible. So yeah, he's just horrible from now on. I think fans are always more reactionary to a down year and they don't give a guy some time. You have to look at what they've been. And to me, Jordan Montgomery has been a solid starting pitcher for a long time. I think he'll get back to that. I don't think his stuff fell off of a cliff. I think it really just was a series of bad circumstances that put him in a horrible headspace. And I think the results you saw are from that. This is a guy that if he gets out of Arizona, gets to a winning situation, gets to some good pitching coaches that can help him out, I think he'll be just fine. You also have the added benefit of a guy that came up with the Yankees. He came up pitching in New York. So I don't think that's going to phase him at all. And he's going to go from the NL West, where you have to play not only in Arizona as your home ballpark, but you're going to play a lot of games in Coors, which sucks. And you're going to play against the Dodgers and the Padres, at least last year, right? You bring them over to the Mets in the NL East. Yes, you got some tougher teams in the Braves and the Phillies, but you get to pitch at Citi Field, more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark or a neutral ballpark. I think it'd actually be a really good acquisition. I'm not saying Jordan Montgomery is the ace that you're getting. I'm saying Jordan Montgomery is maybe the second or third starter that you're bringing in, where you're saying, you know what, we need starting pitching depth. Let's get a guy that has done it for a long time. Let's push our other starters down the pecking order. If you sign a Snell, a Burns, a Fried, or maybe even just Sean Manaea, whatever it is, and Jordan Montgomery is the second or third guy you add, and you're trying to build out a six-man rotation. So you have Kodai Senga, David Peterson, and then three additions, as well as all the other guys that could factor in the Blackburns, the McGills, the Budos, down the line of Brandon Sproat. Then the Mets are going to go into next season with a lot of pitching depth. I think Jordan Montgomery is going to be a guy that's going to bounce back, and whatever team takes the gamble on him, I think it's going to pay off in a pretty big way. I wouldn't want Jordan Montgomery on a 4 or 5 year deal, but 1 year deal doesn't cost any prospects to get him, just costs cash. I think this is a pretty low risk move for the New York Mets that they should probably make. So we'll see if they do it. Those are three bold, outside of the box trade targets for the Mets this offseason. Cody Bellinger, love that idea in center field. Carlos Correa, a little bit more pie in the sky, but it would realize what we were all hyped about a little over, I guess, 2 years ago now. And you would have that Puerto Rican pairing with Correa and Lindor, never know. And then Jordan Montgomery as a guy that you can slide into that rotation for a pretty reasonable trade. And that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I am planning on putting together another show. I'm actually going on another little trip over the weekend, so it'll be audio only. But I am planning to do another show. We'll see if there is some Juan Soto news to discuss, or maybe we'll be talking a little bit of prospects on tomorrow's show to make up for the lost show on Monday. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 11,000 subscribers, and we are within 200 of that goal. So I appreciate all of you who subscribe. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. After your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.